Okay, so now we're going to focus on lists. So a list basically in SharePoint is a bunch of metadata. It's like just a place to hold rows of information. So like a database. It's not a full-fledged database like SQL or anything like that, but it's basically a database. It's rows of data, and then that data is followed up by metadata. So we're in an employee onboarding list right now. Its core component is to store information about information. So typically you don't have any documents that are stored in lists. You can have attachments, but typically a list just holds records of information. A perfect example is if you have a form, you're filling out a form, or a survey. When someone fills out the form, that information would go into a database or go into a list, and then that would be the record of that form. So that's basically it. Again, real quickly, to create an item within a list, you just click on new and then you fill in the information. So this one is quite a bit of stuff. Hopefully we don't got to fill out all of it. But so work, we know what they're asking for. Work, yes, please. And then we can have complete by, and then these are all different types of metadata that has been attached to this particular list. Okay, so I'm trying not to fill in all of it. So let's just click save, see what happens. And so perfect, it's updated, or it's allowed me to enter in this record. So here we have it. We have our first record of information. And again, like I said, this is all a list is. It's basically just rows of data about data. And what I mean by that is the rows followed up by columns that further describe that record. So this particular record, yes, please, and metadata called complete by, and I populate it with first day. If I wanted to edit, I can simply edit it, add more information. So completed, yes. And then we have a date, not quite sure what. Usually it brings up a calendar. Quite sure why it didn't, but okay, so click save. And so now we have some more metadata that follows or better describes this record of information. Another cool thing with lists is you can attach forms. So this is a pretty new thing with SharePoint. Here you can click on form, and basically this is another way that you can tabularly enter this information. So again, I could do this. So it looks like with this, it's a way for me to customize the current form. So I'm customizing first. I'm not filling it out. So what department? I'm just winging it here. All right, so I just updated this particular entry because remember, I didn't really know what it meant doing that. And then of course I can make changes here. I can change this to become a single line text or whatever, things like that. And then obviously once I'm done, I can also add a field. And then once I'm done, it just automatically saves changes. And then I can preview the form if I want. I can see how it's going to look. And then this is how it's now currently look for end users. And then of course I can send this form, I guess maybe for further evaluation of it, things like that. So I click on new. What's interesting though is even though I have the form in that way, let's see if I can configure layout. Yeah, you can configure this way as well. And then you can customize in Power Apps as well. I think what's interesting though is you have the form and I'm filling out the form. Edit form, do or stop accepting responses. And then you can edit the form. It's really weird. Not quite sure why, if I've created the form, why I can't use the form from here. It's really interesting. Yeah. And that's pretty neat. You can create different themes and look and feel. And then obviously accept responses. That's what happens when you submit the form. It's really interesting. So I can preview the form. I can fill it in. So let's do that. Let's see what happens when I preview it. So go to form again. And I'm going to use this one. This is the one where I made the change. There it is. So let's delete this additional one because I don't need this one. So let's delete that, delete the form, and then let's preview. And so what I was expecting is when you click new, it would bring this up and then you could just fill it out. I work in HR and task whatever 3 days. And there's a date calendar I was looking for earlier. And then click submit. And then thank you for your response. Yeah, I got it. And yeah, and theoretically it should update. Where'd my form go? Lost. All right, let's go to boarding checklist, exit grid. And then I would have expected it to show up here, but it did say Microsoft list. Let's go here. So I'm getting ahead of myself, but there's also lists here as well. They're basically associated with your SharePoint site. So this one, and there it is. It's really weird. I'm not quite sure why this didn't show up in SharePoint, unless maybe it took its sweet time. Reporting checklist. Okay, there it is. Oh boy. Okay, not the greatest demo, but hey, welcome to SharePoint. So yeah, it did do what I expected it to do. So now, as you can see, there's 2 items. And then, of course, like I said, since I brought it up, you could also do lists via the Microsoft app called Microsoft Lists. And again, the lists are associated with your SharePoint site. So if you notice, employee onboarding, but this is the site it's on, which is a site we're currently working on. And then I have another employee onboarding for another completely different site, as well as some other lists. And then this list is for the cookie site. This list is for Kev's Cool site. Okay, so think of lists as just the M365 way to access lists, but they still operate within the world of SharePoint. So again, lists are pretty interesting. I love them. I think they're quite cool, and it allows you to get feedback, you can get surveys, you can do workflows, you can do things where if you need to have statuses updated, you can definitely leverage it using a list. And then based off a certain status, there could be a trigger that then kicks off an email or some sort of task for others to do. Lists are quite powerful. You have the integration component. You can, again, associate it with Power Automate. You can connect it to Power BI, which is fantastic. I always say you can now have your static data work for you. So if you use lists quite heavily or leverage more accurate leverage lists within your organization, you can now build some insights and you can use Power BI to help visualize some of the information that you're collecting. And it's currently static now in your SharePoint site. Now you can bring it to life with lists and workflows and things like that. All right. So again, lists function very similar to document libraries. You can create views, edit views is the same. You can get to the list settings as well and things like that, okay? So again, just an overview of lists and their capabilities. And of course, we didn't want to get too in depth, but once again, I do courses on this stuff. So if you want to learn a little bit more, you can definitely subscribe to one of the courses, okay? So we're also going to get more into it, but this is just a high level overview. All right, so hopefully you learned a lot and see you in the next one.